So, yes, my name is Eric, and I'll start out maybe telling you a little bit about myself, where I came from. As one of my newfound friends yesterday evening, a Dutch guy, as you will understand in a second, told me I am the enemy. Or I should say, in the old days, I was the enemy, because I used to work for a company called SAP, and as you know, they also dabble a little bit in the ERP business. But what did I do there? I ran development for something called SAP CRM. And just to explain that part of my background, that's a product with a lot of ERP in it. So we have master data, pricing, billing, even a financial solution of sorts, and lots of other stuff in that solution. So I have some background in understanding ERP as well, especially since we built a lot of stuff together with the ERP guys. I also ran a global line of service called custom development, so I'm fairly familiar with traveling around and meeting customers and partners. But I must tell you one thing right at the start. One thing that is very exciting about this role is the partner channel, as we say. All you guys, all the partners who build solutions on top of our NAV. And I'm just overwhelmed walking around the exhibition floor this morning and seeing all these solutions that you guys have built. That's really the big excitement for me, one of the big excitements for me doing this. Just briefly, I've also done a couple of other things, like studying and growing up and stuff. That was done in Stockholm, so I'm a Swedish guy. Hey. As you realize from my previous employer that I mentioned, I have also lived in Germany, although I was doing the global exec thing and traveling around, but I've actually lived for more than 20 years in Germany. Das heißt, ich kann auch auf Deutsch über NAV reden. And if you buy me a bottle of red wine, or at least a glass, je vais aussi essayer de parler français, si vous voulez. But that's about it. Let's not go into Italian and Spanish. That becomes a little bit complicated. Otherwise, yeah, I also worked for a company called Siemens for a longer time in Munich in Germany before SAP, for a small company. So I know small companies too, also from the inside. And for another giant company, HP, running development most of the time, or running services, consulting businesses. So that was about me. But the more interesting thing is that we are launching NAV 2013, as you all know, and that's another great thing, to join just when a great product is launched, and you get to go around and brag about the product totally without inhibitions, because I wasn't there, so it's all Micheal's and Thomas and all the other guys' work. And that's what we're doing here, telling you about NAV 2013, all the great stuff, all the new things. I just want to mention one thing beyond 2013. And you have to hand it to the Dutch colleagues. Some of them are not that slow. So another thing that my newfound Dutch friend told me yesterday evening was that, if they hired you to do the GM role, that must mean that they plan to actually do some investment in NAV going forward. And yes, that's true. So there will be even a release after NAV 2013, and I don't want to go into details. It will be sooner than you think. And it will contain a lot of interesting investments to take NAV further into the future. But that's it. This is about what we have now, and here's an incomplete list of stuff, features, solutions, functionality, things in NAV 2013. And I'm not going to talk about this. Other people are going to talk about this, the whole conference around NAV, what's in 2013, and you can start digging into it in a second. I just want to show you something. I wonder if I should be doing this. It's like, this is the, well, already mid-4th week, towards the end of my 4th week working here with NAV. This was not supposed to happen. Oh, I hit the wrong button. It's this one. Now we'll see what happens. Okay. This screen should be familiar. Now I need to... Yeah, right. So here's a feature for you. This is a list of customers. And now, in 2013, you can go here and show anything as a chart. So we can select some dimensions here. And, for example... oh, yes. Balance due, and then split this across. But here's the here. Split the balance due across country and region, and then maybe across the salespersons in these countries and regions. And boom. You see that you get a chart based on the list, and you can see where there are blips on this chart. So this guy, JR, in the US, has 401,291. And where is the currency symbol? But there you can go across all the blips and have a look at what it is. One feature out of all those features. And just to show how open-minded we are at Microsoft, I can do this. Let me see. And show you the web client in the Chrome browser. And it works. And we've tested it, I hope. I wasn't there to check, right? But you have to trust people in this business. So I'm still working on it, as you see. I hope to come up to the standards of my predecessor really soon. We'll see. In some of the next conferences, I'll do some more demos. For now, that's it. I'll be here the whole 2 days, and you're very welcome to, talk to me and ask me questions, which I won't be able to answer, but I will tell you where Thomas and Micheal and other people are who can answer the questions. And I wish you all a really interesting and worthwhile conference.
You all know me from last year. My name is Thomas Hejlsberg. I'm here together with Micheal, and we're going to do a ton of demos on the 2013. On behalf of Microsoft, I also want to thank Luke, and actually I was thinking last night that we are geeks here, so we can actually already now celebrate the 10-year anniversary of Tech Days, if you think binary. Thought about that? It's actually interesting. So, and in 2 years, what knows what will come there. So, what Micheal and I are going to do today is that we're going to run you through a ton of demos of some of the features that we've done in 2013. And without further hesitation, let me just move you into the first one, or first thing here. First of all, we have some info about the classic runtime is no longer supported. This should not come as a surprise since we've been chopping off stuff, through the last release as well. But this time, there are no more classic forms, reports, database, the NAS is gone, there are no data ports, seafront, and all the classic stuff at runtime is gone with this release. But the classic client is not gone at all, because we still use the classic client for development environment, which is now we renamed it into Microsoft Dynamics NIV development environment. It's pretty long to say that. It takes some time to get used to instead of saying classic client. But it is the development environment as it is of now. Another thing we done is we made the server 64-bit, which means that the memory constraints that we had before is now gone for forever, I guess. Until the 128-bit thing comes around, but at least, that'll take some years. We run 64-bit on any CPU. The client is still 32-bit, so you can still have .NET Interop on client with 32-bit components. And finally, we are Unicode compliant at runtime, so you can store Chinese addresses or whatever you like to do. So the first thing I'm going to venture into is administrating and a little bit about how NAV is deployed across the different tiers. So in the classic tier, we only had two tiers. We had the SQL server or the proprietary server sitting somewhere, and then we had clients connecting into that server and possibly a NAS sitting as a faceless client also operating on the same database. In 2009, however, we moved into this rather complex scheme of using Windows identity and possibly having Active Directory sitting there, and that posed some benefits and also posed some problems. And one of the biggest problems we had was that we decided to have the actual user from the client being the user on the SQL server. We did it because that was the predominant way of handling security at that point, but it also had some problems if you had a 3-tier deployment. You needed to venture into service principal and delegation and all kind of things that would actually make the deployment of NAV in a true 3-tier system really complex. And we actually removed that with the 2013, so we use a single almighty account from the NAV server into the SQL server, which means that all the other things are gone with the delegation and principles and so forth. We also did something else. We introduced other ways of authenticating, so you do not necessarily need to do Windows authentication as the only way of doing authentication. Now you can always use Live ID or even Google ID or other things through ACS, one of the offerings of the Azure platform, where you can get authentication tickets from various providers of tickets, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Live ID, and whatever. Or we also introduced something that we call simple username password. So kind of like in the very old days of NAV, you can just enter a simple list of username and password and use that as your authentication scheme. It's not as secure, but it's extremely simple to set up. So you can say this is kind of the evolution of simplicity. We are really focused on making things simple here. So we simplified the authentication schemes. We simplified the architecture of deploying NAV to a multiple tier solution. We made it more hostable. And then we developed a lot of tools to actually do the maintenance of NAV. And I'm gonna demo some of these. So the first thing I'm going to look into is the administration pages of NAV. So I start up the Windows client. I can go to the home page, my role center, and then I can go and find the administration pages. That sits in departments, IT administration, and general list and so forth. It's actually a ton of stuff is in here, so I would at this point already recommend starting using this one, because if I go to general here, I'll find, for instance, my user list here, but I might as well just have begun with typing users. And if I do that, I immediately get the entire navigation model of NAV being searched, and I can find whatever I want to do by simple typing what I'm looking for. So we use that a lot when demoing and when operating the system, and I recommend you do the same. Anyways, in here you see a lot of the list that you can use to maintain your NAV installation. For instance, you have web services sitting here, which services you want to expose, printer selection, and users. And let's look at the user list. So this is the list of the current authenticated users to the NAV system. If you're going to go create a new one, you just press new, and you have the usual things to fill out, which relates to a user. Now, the interesting thing here is that you all do this now with the role-tailored client, or the Windows client. And you can select different ways of doing authentication here. You'll see this ACS authentication I briefly mentioned before. You have the username password sitting here. You can just put in username password and then make it simple for you. So everything is done in the Windows client here. Other things that are of interest would be the management of the actual server instances. Let me close down this one. And then start a management console. This is a standard management console of a server. So it's adding the snap-in. It's the usual Microsoft Dynamics snap-in we've done for the MMC console. So you could just start up your MMC, and you'll see the portal coming up here. Now the Microsoft Dynamics NAV sits here, and now you have all the server instances listed here that are sitting on this server. Again, you'll notice actually this is running on client bits, so it's the same UI we're using, although it's not the client running here. So what we can do here is you can actually change all the things that you used to need to go into and edit a config file of changing. Everything is here. So you have the instances, you have the port number, you have everything sitting here. You can enable and change the port of whatever service you want within this particular service. But it's even better because doing this through the UI is one thing, but most people would like to make automated deployment and other features. And to do that, we made an architectural decision in NAV. We would like to have everything being PowerShell enabled. So the first thing we do is we do a PowerShell capability of doing that particular feature, and then we'll do the UI on top if necessary. So of course, you could choose in here to create a new instance of a server. If I click here, I can click, give me a new instance, add an instance. If I do that, I'm asking what I want this server to be called and so forth. And I'll end up having two instances of an NAV server running on this machine. But that can also be done through a simple PowerShell script. So if I look at this script over here, let me go edit it so you can see it. So in here you'll see a very simple script using the PowerShell system. So it basically does a for loop and then create 5 instances, setting up the port numbers sequentially. Let me just run this one. There's no UI here, it just runs. So it'll take a second to run that, and then I'll have 6 instances on this machine, the one I already got, and then additional 5 ones. I can go to my PowerShell here and have it refreshed. And if I do that, I'll see now, the 4 of them have been created at this point, so now I have 5 of these instances. So you can do the same thing, creating users and all kinds of things through PowerShell commands makes it extremely easy to maintain your installation. The best of it is that all these PowerShell capabilities can be remoted, so you can also, at one machine, do things with another server at another tier remotely. Let me just remove all these instances again. I do that by this script. I just run this, and I'll just remove the extra instances there. Right, let me jump into something completely different here. So I want to talk a little bit about the developer enhancement we did to the development environment of NAV. The first thing is we improved the page designer here. well, let's be honest. You know, the page designer of 2009 had some challenges, should we put it like that? It's like the classic editor. I'm standing here year after year, and I'm still wanting us to upgrade it to Notepad. But at least this time we got the page designer, and we really did great things to it. And let me skip the slide and jump right into demo mode on that one. So what I'll do, I'll just close down these consoles here. I'll go open up the development environment. I'll do this one. And let me take the customer card and go and design the customer card. Immediately you notice some differences in here. First of all, we made the groups collapsible, so now you can actually click on this group here and have things being collapsed, which gives you a better overview of what's going on in here. We selected the columns you're seeing more based on what you need to see instead of what we like to show. But the biggest improvement here is the preview button. If I press the preview button down here, what will happen would be that the Windows client would start up in a special mode, and it shows the current definition that I'm running on. I didn't compile anything, and I didn't even save the current page. I just press preview, and now I have the live representation what I'm doing here. But these two are also in sync now. So if I click something over here, you'll see the field being highlighted at the other side. And vice versa. I can go and say, this field, where do you have this one? And you'll see the correct one being highlighted in the designer, which makes it way easier to do these changes. You'll also see changes being done live. So if let's say the number label over here, I want to change that. So I'll put something silly in here. Something silly like Micheal. Put it in here. Just need to spell his name correctly. But anyways, you'll see immediately this caption get changed here. And of course, I can change it back to the original value by just deleting this value. And when I do that, I'll have the immediate change being done here. Also, you'll see things like the actions, this customer balance to date. Let me see, where does that come from? I can click it immediately, and I'll went into the page design action and have that one highlighted, and so forth. So there's an interaction between the page designer and the actual page running, which should make it extremely easier to do these pages. All right. So we'll move to something else. Testing capabilities. In 2009, we introduced a lot of testing capabilities into the NAV product, allowing you to write tests in AL, testing the application code that comes with the system and the things you add on top of it. This is extremely important because typically back in the old days, testing was always tied together with a lot of challenges. Some of them were, first of all, handling expected failures was a typical problem. What do you do if what you're doing here is expected to fail? And actually, if it doesn't fail, that is a failure. If you have business logic that needs to react to the fact that this particular invoice doesn't exist, you do a get and it's not there, how do you go about testing your failure cases? That has always been tied with trouble. Another thing that ruins testability is UI pops up in the middle of. That could be confirmation dialogues, or it can even be pages asking for input and so forth. That also makes it very hard to do automated testing. In the old days, you had these robots that just blindly clicked on screen hoping there would be a button below at the point the click came. Or you had other things where you looked for window handles and stuff like that. But it was really, your testing was very far away from your real application. And what we wanted to do is to bring the things closer to each other, allowing you to do these tests while you're doing your functionality. Important for us, and I think for everybody, is that you have a suite of automated testing. In Microsoft, we have thousands of tests, and whenever we do a check-in into our depot of code, all the tests are run to see that we didn't do any regressions. That doesn't guarantee a superb quality, but I can tell you it helps a lot. And at the same time, it prevents the thing where you block teams from having code that doesn't execute and so forth. So we're very focused on testing, and I think the customer will see the end result of what we do, and on top of that, what you do. Therefore, you should be as concerned about testing as we are, because that's the only way customers are going to get superb quality. So what we are doing is that we are focused very much on testing in the NAV product, and I want to show you some of the capabilities inside the product with the 2013 release. Some of this is something that we built in 2009, but we enhanced it in 2013, and I want to show you some of these features. So, move into that. What I do here, I have a simple code unit. Let's just close this down. So here we have a code unit. This is a test code unit. What makes this a test code unit is actually, if you go look at the properties of this code unit, you'll see it has a subtype of test. When you make a code unit a test subtype as opposed to the normal, for instance, what that means is that you can now run that code unit, and this underlying system will know you're running a test when you're running a test code unit. And what that means is that the system will automatically take every method in that test code unit and run them one at a time, provided they are also flagged as tests. I'll show you how that is done. Same thing with properties. And the system will report at the end how all these tests went. Now, the first test is quite simple. Very simple thing here, and this could be a typical test case where you're kind of adding two numbers and you're checking the result. If not, you throw an error. That's extremely simple. But if the test reaches the end without any errors, the test is assumed to be successful. Now the next one is a little bit more tricky, because in here I have something that I expect to fail. This is the get scenario of before, or this. I want to test what happens if I do this invalid calculation, because I really want to test my error handling capabilities within my application. So I end up in a situation, I want this test to run, I need it to fail, but of course if I run it as it is right now, what would happen would be that NAV would report a failure, and my entire test mechanism would be ruined. So to compensate for this situation, we came up with a new keyword called assert error. When you use this keyword, that means that the next block of code, which can be either begin end or a simple statement like here or function call or whatever, the next block of code is expected to fail. If no error comes from the next statement, the system will now throw an error saying, I didn't get an error, and that is now the error. You get that? Your head spins when you start thinking of this. But it's extremely important, because this allows you to actually go about and do a failure case testing, which is actually even more important than the happy path testing. Now the third one is also annoying, because this test just happens to bring up some UI. And everybody knows that UI comes up in the middle of the test. You need a human to go press here, or an automatic method to do something about it. And UI coming up in test scripts are terrible. So what I really like to do here would be to have kind of a programmatic way of handling this particular UI. And that's exactly what we built. So what you have down here is another method called a test UI handler. So what you can do is you can redirect all UI from a given method to a handler, which is exactly what we're doing here. So what you do is you go view the globals, you go into this particular function, the test UI message box. So I'm looking into this function here. I go look at the properties for that function, and then I assign a UI handler, which is now the test UI handler. Sorry for that. Damn. So, like this. So I assign the handler function of this particular method to be the handler down here. And what this means is that now I won't see any UI whatsoever pop up here. Instead, this methods down here will get called, which means when I run this test, I won't see any UI whatsoever. Now this function down here can do whatever it wants with the message coming in here. In this particular situation, it's just setting a global variable with the message here. And if I outcomment this code here, I can start checking on whether the global variable changed and so forth. But you'll get the idea of this. So you have ways inside the NAV system today to write tests, to do the unhappy path testing, and to handle UI. Most of this, if not all of it, was actually part of the 2009 release. But let me dig into some of the things we did in 2013 to further improve this. So let me just make a brief announcement here for the application test toolkit. That is actually being updated as we speak. It will, in all likelihood, current schedule is that we will post it on Partner Source and Mibuso in the October timeframe. So there will be an update here. Now, the page testability is something completely new to the 2013 product, and let me show you that, how that works. So I'll just go and open up another test code unit I have here, which introduces some new things here. You'll see the first thing that happens is I have a myCustomerCard.openEdit. The myCustomerCard is a new variable type that we introduced in 2013. So let me go to the local variables of this particular method. You'll see my myCustomerCard is of type test page. This is a new type we did. What that means is that you can actually open up pages which only exist in memory. There's no UI attached to that page whatsoever. You still get to select the type of it, in this case, the customer card. So it's just like a normal page, except no UI is shown, and you get to interact with this page like you see here. So basically, myCustomerCard.address2.value, I assign that into a text, and then I change it, assign something back to it. And at the end, I go myCustomerCard.theOKButton.invoke, and so forth. So now I can actually programmatically do things with my pages. And of course, there's in the usual way, there's full F5 intelligence here, so I can go myCustomerCard.functions or .properties, and I get all the properties, the caption of the current page, for instance. I can change it, I can check it, I can do whatever. Everything is in here for you to go and programmatically access and write your tests without being dependent on robots and all the evil things I mentioned before. Now, if you go run this one, what happens is that it'll go look at the address2 value inside the customer card. So let me just do this manually just to show you how it works. I open up the Windows client. I go to the customer list, and I take the first row of the customer list. And I go into edit mode of this list, and then I look at the address2. Currently, it's bar. So when I run this particular test, what should happen, if you follow the code here, well, it check whether it's foo, and then it changes to bar the other way around. So let me just go run this. So if I run this test, it will come up and say it's successful. You see the test code unit ran, and it was a success. And if I refresh this page here, it will come up and tell me that I have a foo now instead of a bar, and so forth. I can change them back and forth. So basically, this is a way for you to programmatically do your test. Extremely important. Now, there are cases where you are not in a situation where you can just open up the page yourself, like we are doing here, by simply going my test page variable.open in edit mode, the line I'm executing to begin with. Now, if you imagine having a a sub-function, a black box, and you need to test, you call into the black box, and that happens to open up a normal page. And you do not have the source code, or you do not want to change it, or whatever. Now you have a different situation, and we also built capabilities of controlling that into the system. Which is what we call, we trap the pages. Just skip this slide. So we trap the pages through a new call that we call trap. So what happens there is you take your test page and you call trap on it. Immediately it will return the execution flow to you. So you have here, I want to trap this page that suddenly appears when I press this particular button. I can't go to the code there and change it, so what I do instead, I go in my test case, I call trap, saying I want to trap the UI that I know will appear here. And then I call this button dot invoke. So I invoke this particular button here. And what happens is now that invoke action will open up a normal page. But aha, I have the trap functionality armed at this point. So instead, we will direct it into a memory-only test page. And now I can go and check capabilities within inside my resource capacity page. And eventually when I'm done that, I can go and close it. So we even have ways of doing testing of black boxes from a test case from the outside. This is something that's new to 2013, and it's a super feature. Right. Next thing, we have a tight agenda here, so I'm racing through a lot of stuff, so sorry for the speed. We do have a lot of sessions, diving into most of these areas after the keynote, of course. The debugger. I just love to talk about the debugger. I think it's so fun. Maybe it's because I make so many coding errors. I don't know, but debugger is a great thing. So some of the things that's new in 2013 is of course the debugger itself. But we can debug all kind of codes. That will be code unit pages, table triggers, all kinds of clients, Windows, web, SharePoint, web services, OData requests, and whatever. We even have the capability of debugging the NAS. The NAS as such, it's gone, but we have background threads now, and Micheal is going to talk more about that in the keynote here. But of course, we can also debug that. So let me go explain a little bit and then go do a demo on this. So the first thing is that you are typically in situations where I just did this piece of code. I want to verify how the flow is. So you put breakpoints where you want to stop, and then you go through debugging. That's fine. But you have other types of debugging where you have errors occurring and you have no idea why. Maybe you don't know where it comes from and so forth. So we have capabilities in debug of break on the first error or any error that might happen. We have capabilities of debugging sessions that doesn't exist yet. And I'll demo some of this. We can set breakpoints from both the Windows client and from the development environment inside the old classic client. We can debug error situations, but instead of reading off slides, let me go demo it. So we can debug a live server and so forth. What I do first, I'll put a bug in the posting routine here. So let me go back here, close up all the things I have here. I'll do the code unit. My favorite is code unit 80. I don't know why, but it's I'll just go search for Tech Days. I made a comment in here to make it easy on myself. This is deep down in the posting routine. You don't need to necessarily understand what's going on here, but if I change this to greater than equal, I will end up in a situation where suddenly I'm doing a division by 0 error inside this code. So let me just say, okay, that's fine. I'll save this code, and then I'll open up the Windows client, and I'll do a given posting. So let me go to my sales orders. I'll pick any of them, it really doesn't matter. And I'll go post this one. Now what happens now is the system detects that I did a change to the code, so it'll recompile in the background the code I changed, so it'll take just a second. But eventually what we'll get up here is a dialog saying nothing to post, right? So it really does matter. All right, so I'll take another one. So there we go. So now I got a division by 0 error due to some coding error made in the code, and I really need to address this. So what I do is I start up the debugger, I go back to the development environment, I go Tools, start up the debugger here, and I want to debug a given session. So I'm actually starting up to debug a live session. The good thing here is there could be hundreds of sessions on this particular server, and I can zoom in on one of them, and I'm not disturbing all the other sessions. They'll keep running. So it's not like normal debuggers where you stop the entire process. No, the NAV debugger will only stop that particular session. So let me go in here and say I want to debug this particular session, so I'll just go debug. You see the list of sessions here, I only have one, which is the Windows client running behind here. I'll go debug this session. That will open up my debugger window. And I have some options in here. The first one I want to make sure is set is the situation whether I can go and break on any error or not. So I'll look at the break rules. You see break on error is set. So this means that the debugger will stop if any call to the AL function error or other errors appear. And that's enough. The debugger is now armed, and I can go replay my scenario in the posting. So I'll take the same sales order here and I'll try to go post. And immediately you'll see the debugger starts flashing when this posting starts to run. It starts flashing down here. So I can go into the debugger, I get the error saying there was a division by 0, and then it presents me with the code exactly where I put my bug before, and here I have the division by 0 error. That's kind of the raw functionality of the debugger. I have tons of options now. I can just hover over this particular variable. It comes from different scopes, but you can see all of them are 0, meaning, you know, I'm doing a division by 0. I can go inspect things. I can put additional breakpoints and all the kind of things you expect from a normal debugger. I'll go and have you explore that yourself. Of course, I can put breakpoints here, and let me just put a breakpoint. I can put conditions on these breakpoints. So if I go to this particular breakpoint and say I want to put a condition on it, I can do a condition saying only when this variable is greater than 5 or something like that. So we'll zoom by the breakpoint if the condition isn't met, and so forth. New things to the debugger capabilities of NAV. All right, when I'm done with this, you know, I go to the development environment. I can also put breakpoints here by pressing F9, and what will happen is I'll see breakpoints coming up here, and then they'll work together with the breakpoints I'm setting in the Windows client. Both of them run on the same list. But for now, I'll just change the code back to what it was. I'll save this and compile it, and then I can go do post my sales order if I want to, and then of course I'll see that everything is okay. Now, the interesting thing here is not as much debugging AL code, but there are some of the special scenarios that you will get. One of them is, for instance, the following scenario. I have a code unit here, which is a simple function called number add. So this is extremely simple. It's an add function that just add these two numbers and return it. So can't be more simple than that. What I did then is I exposed this call as a web service, and you should of course imagine some extremely more complex logic here. And then I have a small program sitting on the outside. Let's close up all this. And you'll see sitting outside here is a small program called number add. And if I call this one, it's adding two numbers, 2 plus 3 is, and then it calls into NAV and actually executes the code you saw before as a web service, and it comes back with result 5, which is not that hard to understand. So I can do it again, and of course it works every time. But let's assume that there's an error here inside the web service. The problem is that web services do not establish a connection to the server and hold on to the connection. No, the connection will appear for a fraction of a millisecond and then immediately be torn down. So if I want to debug that particular web service and I look at my session list, currently you'll see the session list is empty because the server does not have any active sessions. And if I want to debug the web service call, I need to be more than extremely lucky to press refresh and see the session, in the fraction of the millisecond that particular session exists, which is a scenario that's extremely annoying in normal cases, especially if you don't know which error to look for and so forth. So what we did instead is we invented something called debug next. So what this means is I want to debug the next session being established. I don't know what it is, but the next session being established, I want to debug. So if I click this one, the debugger will open now. It really doesn't have a session yet. And to make things even easier for myself, I'll tell it I want it immediately to break when this session is established. And I'll just leave it here. And then I can go call my number add function once more. Grab this one here. So I click this one again. That will establish the session. You'll see immediately the debugger will stop. This is now hanging, waiting for the result of the web service. And I have my code sitting here with a breakpoint being set at the code that returns and add these two numbers together. That is super smart. You're welcome to do applauses at any time, by the way. Yeah. Right, all right. So another thing you saw, I press continue here, and immediately it returns up here to the program with the function and so forth. So you can actually do debugging of web services on a live server at the same time. Another thing that's interesting with the debugger is that it also represents some investment that we are doing in our tooling story in general. So if I move back to the development environment and go look at this page, now this page is actually the debugger. So of course we did the debugger in AL. Why wouldn't we? So what we did was we provided some system functions for setting and handling breakpoints and so forth, but then we did nothing more. Then we just did pages and AL code to do the rest. So here's the debugger. So if you want to customize the debugger, by all means, that is possible because the code sits here, which is something which in all likelihood will be part of our future tooling story moving forward, and have you being able to do, designers and stuff like that. It's not part of the next release. I'm not doing any promises here, but I'm an architect. I have visions, right? All right, we'll leave the debugger, move into something completely different, which is something new to 2013, the query object. This is really something that will change the world of NAV, and I think you'll realize why. So before we invented the query object in 2013, we had this what we quickly invented and named the loopy construct. Where you basically, typically you enumerate all the customers to get all the sales orders, and for all sale order you get the header and then the lines, and for each line you do a lookup into items or something like that. When you see this result here in a SQL log, you'll see gazillions of SQL requests from the server tier to the SQL server, because everything turns into a new select statement, and that hits performance terribly when we do this. Unfortunately, there was no way in AL to go do what corresponds to a join or something like that. So what we did then is we realized that we need something that can aggregate different data sources or different tables together, basically doing a join, and that became the NAV query object, which is part of the 2013 release. So, without further hesitation, this will end up being a single statement now. So you can actually do a select blah, 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 where joined with blah, 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 and so forth. And you end up getting one result set that represent everything from the customer through the sales header lines all the way down to item and item description. And let us look at that. So I'll move into defining a query here. So you noticed we have a query being one of the application objects we can do now. So I'll move into a query called customer list. Now this is an extremely simple query which just joins together the customer and the customer's salesperson, but it suits the demonstration purposes here. So you see, you select a data item, basically a table. You add the fields necessary, because one of the other things that we want to do with query is we want to enable the capability of only selecting the columns you need to see and not all of them. Currently, when you do records and next, all the fields are transported from the SQL server to the server tier, whether you need them or not. And it's way easier or would enhance the performance if we can only select the fields that is needed. The problem, however, of only selecting some of the fields is, what do we do with business logic? Because if you only selected the address field and you have some business logic when you create stuff, you need to do things with other fields. And to overcome these problems, we made a very simple decision that query is only read-only. You can't modify records using a query object. And by doing that, that allows us also to include aggregations in queries, because suddenly it doesn't matter, because you're only going to see these data as read-only and you're not going to modify things from them. What you can do, however, you can from a query ask for the fully populated record of the particular thing you want to edit, and then you can do modify on the record. Anyways, so what you do is you select a customer, you select the data item salesperson code, and in here, on the properties on the data item, here you have what we call the data item link. Here you can describe exactly how these two things relate to each other. So basically we go here and say, well, the field from the salesperson code field relates to the customer's salesperson code field, and now you did the join. Now, of course, somebody here, especially in here, would ask, well, what does this mean, this exclude row if no match? What that means is, what happens if you have a customer where the salesperson record doesn't exist? What should we provide at the end of the result set then? Should we put in default values, or should we exclude the entire row? So that is what you get to select here. The other option is, use default values if no match. But being a geek, of course, we also included, the real thing in here, it's a left outer join. Now I know what we are talking about, and so forth. So you have all the SQL options here if you want to do all the complex inner joins and outer joins and so forth. We support all of them. All right, so let me just move this back to where we were. And I can go and run this query out of the box. And what happens when I do that, I'll see the Windows client open, and it'll present me with the query result here, which now contains both the customer, and at the end we'll have the salesperson name and all these kind of things. So that's the first thing of getting rid of the loopy construct, which will greatly enhance the performance. You have other options on the query to kind of talk about how do you want to respect locking, if somebody locked and blocked, a record that the query kind of goes by and so forth. And I'll get back to that in a second. Now, another thing you can do when you're just looking at the result here, you can export it. Let's export it in XML, and you can go look at the XML here, and you'll see the schema of that XML is really easy to understand. So if you want to have an extra application sitting on the side, you can go and load that XML into a DOM, and now you have a way of getting data from NAV. There's also a direct export to Microsoft Excel that will export all this into a table, and now you can go party with it inside Excel, and of course to Word and some of the other Office capabilities. But this is really not where it's getting super interesting. We can do more. So let me just close down this one, go back to the environment here. I just want briefly to touch upon the possibility here of doing aggregations. You can take any column here. Of course, it needs to be a numerical column to make sense. And you can start doing aggregates here. So you can do a sum, a minimum, maximum, and count, and average, and so forth. And you'll see immediately we start grouping by all the other fields. Meaning, for every unique combination of these particular fields, I want the sum of all these fields. An extremely easy way. And the good thing about this is translated into SQLish that's put to the SQL server. So this is executed on the SQL server, and you will have instant results, as opposed to having AL code looping through potentially a ton of records. Now this kind of covers the basic of the query, how to define it, and the elements, executing a query, and a little bit about the aggregations. So what does this mean to the AL application? We did do some investigation across the AL application, what the potential benefits of using query, and they're huge. And then we took some of the scenarios and implemented query. Due to time constraints, we haven't been through all the application and replacing everything with query, but we did some of them. The raw SQL speed here is phenomenal opposed to looping through records. And on the locking issue, you can choose whether to just ignore locks. So you can say, I want this query to read what's there. If somebody locked it, I don't care. Give me the record anyways. Because, again, queries are read-only. So you can construct queries that will never, ever block, which is another capability of the query. Now, to show you some of these, things, let me just loop into a simple scenario here. So I close down the environment and I go into warehouse picking, which is a typical scenario that we need to handle. So I have this item. I'll go into the picking of this item. Basically, you should imagine the following scenario here. I have a customer order, I'm in a warehouse, I need to go find 65 of these particular gadgets, whatever he's ordering. And the warehouse is big, things are placed into bins and lots and what do I know. And the structure here, of course there are some shelves and stuff, but there's not, the bins themselves is not a list of the possible bins. No, it's kind of like when I have things on my warehouse, I put as many as I can into one bin, and I put it on a shelf somewhere. And now I have a bin 13. Now, if the items were bigger, I might not have a bin 13, and so forth. So the only way to figure out the bins containing the thing, I'm going to pick here, in this case, Ethernet cables. The only way to determine the bins that contains Ethernet cables are actually to go into the list of all the items where they are located and enumerate all of them and give me all the unique combination of bins and so forth. And doing that in AL means traversing more than 1 million records. And let me just show you just a quick example here. I have a code unit here that does exactly that. So this one is a very simple code unit. It doesn't do any, complex stuff. It just takes all the records in this particular warehouse and loops through them in AL. It doesn't look at unique combination, but it does what is needed to find all the unique combinations. So I want to look at this one. I try to run this particular piece of code. This will take about 20 or 30 seconds to complete, to loop through the millions of records and find these things. So let me go back to the pick while we are looking at this. You see the UI now is blocked because this code is running, waiting for the result of this count operation. Now what we can do with query instead is we can push the entire operation of looping through all these records into the SQL server. See, the code came back here saying there was 1 million records and took 26 seconds or something to loop through them. And that was without any look into the unique combinations and so forth. Now what we did then in NAV 2013 in the application area looking through this, of course, every time you change an item, you don't want to wait 26 seconds for getting the possible bins and lots where I can find Ethernet cables on my warehouse. So we need to do something more clever, which exactly is what we did. So we invented a query. So I have a query in here, lot numbers by bin, and this one does the exact same thing. So you'll see here it's only using one table, the warehouse entry table. It goes through all the location, item, variant, zone, bin, whatever, and say for each unique combination you find of these things, please give me the sum of quantities inside that particular bin. This operation takes a fraction of a millisecond almost. And I can demo this for you because we actually implemented that into the NAV 2013 application, right where we are at right now. You see it here. This table over here is populated and seeded by a query. So you have a query populating a temporary table, and then you use the temporary table here to be shown. And this means for every record change I do here, I have this one being populated. You see the speed here. This is the 26 seconds that's turned into some fraction. So I'm looking at hard drives, here are the bin numbers. I'm looking at Ethernet cables, here are the bin numbers. That's the speed of this. So you see where this is going, moving forward, doing this in the application will tremendously enhance the performance and thereby the use case scenarios with the query object. Right. But we're not done. The query object can do much more. This is just what we can use it for inside the NAV. But we can do more than that. So let me go back a little bit, back to the customer list we had before. So this guy. So what I want to do now is I want my vendors or my partners or whatever to go access my customer list. Maybe not a very good scenario, but just play with me here. So I want to expose this customer list for external partners to go access it. So what I do then is I go into the Windows client and I go to my services. Again, I use this one. I get up all things that has to do with services. In this case, it's the web service. And here I have the table of services that I expose from NAV 2013. Currently, I have the demo I showed before, the A plus B numbers. And now I have my customer list sitting here as a query. And I can choose to expose that as an OData source. So I go edit the list. I say, yes, please expose this one. And now I have some interesting capabilities. Let me go to the Internet Explorer here. And I'll take my favorites and I show the OData root. Now what this is NAV 2013 server supports exposing data through OData. OData is a standard protocol. It's not invented by Microsoft. We just adhere to it. So what I can ask for here is I can ask the server, please give me a list of all the services that you provide to the surrounding world. And currently the server responds in two things. I have a company, basically a list of companies, and I have a customer list. If I remove the checkmark, the customer list would immediately be gone here. So this is what I do. And the navigation model here is extremely simple. Of course, you have to do this programmatically, but it's an agreed standard here. So I just take this customer list and put up at the end of the URL. So I go customer list. And the second I do that, I get another result. This is actually all the customers from my list before, including the salesperson and so forth. So I have the records here, and I can do further navigation. The good thing about OData is include both the data, but it also includes two other things. It includes the navigation model of how to do drill downs into further areas, and it includes filtering and all kinds of things. I can go in here in the URL and put where equals something, and that is pushed to the server, so the entire calculation is done at server side, and then you get the result quickly. So OData is something that is really moving forward in the world. And other Microsoft products in the Microsoft stack actually uses OData, which now allows NAV 2013 to become a member of these stacks. And of course, I want to show that. So I'll go to this one. I go into, again, the Explorer. And I want to show something else here. Let me show the report manager. This is the SQL Server reporting services running server side. One of the good things about SQL Server reporting services is typically they operate on a SQL Server, but they can also operate on alternate data sources, one of them being ta-da, OData. So what we do now is we configure this instance of reporting services or this particular customer list report to use data from OData. You can see that if you go here and manage this particular thing. Did I click it? Well, anyways. So what I'll do instead, I'll just run it. You'll see what comes up here. If I run this particular thing, the reporting services will start up. Or at least it's supposed to start up, and it'll do the customer list based on the OData feed that we saw before. This is where you kind of go, interesting. Well, there we go. So now I have SQL reporting services loading a report based on the OData feed coming from NAV. And this report, at the same time, does some slicing and dicing with these data. You also have filtering capabilities of the SQL reporting services. So let me just try to change this filter up here and then rerun the report. So now I can use reporting services to do data from NAV to build all kinds of things. And I built the report in such a manner that, if I have red items going on here, I have another. Please, go highlight here and go explore further. So let me just, as a last thing I want to show you, adventure into this one, which will open Excel in combination with Power Pivot. And again, both Excel and Power Pivot can also live on OData, meaning that now these guys can draw data from NAV directly through the OData exposure that we have. Oh, apparently it takes a second. So the good thing here is that you have Power Pivot taking the OData data set, and what I'm going to show in a second is that Power Pivot can do something else. It can stitch together different OData data sources. So what we did now is that we have the OData data from NAV, the customer list coming in. At the same time, I went on to the Azure Data Market, another piece of the Microsoft stack, and bought myself a data set listing all the countries with a status on whether they are industrialized countries or development countries or whatever. Then I take the country from the customer list, the Azure Data Market data set, and stitch these two data sets together into a join. And now I can make a list of how my customers worldwide are, into development countries or industrialized countries or all these kind of things I can do, in one go, which makes it extremely interesting to see. So the first thing we'll see here, I'm just going to enable the editing here. The first thing you're going to see is you have this Excel spreadsheet here with some cubes. You can go look at the different salesperson, and immediately the data will update only showing this particular salesperson. I can take the filters away again. But more interesting, I can go look at the OData here. So I go into Power Pivot, I want to look at the Power Pivot window, and here I have the data set sitting from the NAV data respecting the filters that I have. And at the same time I have the other data set coming from the Azure Data Market, which just is another OData source, and I can stitch these two together. You see where this is going. I mean, the possibilities of exposing NAV data like this is enormous. We can do tremendous things utilizing the different pieces of the Microsoft stack combined with NAV. That's it. That's what I'm going to cover. So at this point, I'll just skip this. I want to leave the microphone to Micheal Nielsen, and he has a lot of demos also to present. Thank you, guys.
So thanks, Thomas. And what you saw here is, I think it's a world record. Thomas, without breathing, did a 3-hour presentation and demos in 1 hour. So please give him an extra applause. So, Thomas. So while I was waiting for it to be my turn, I remembered back on the first version of NAV I shipped. That was in November '87. We started when I joined the company in April '87, and we did it in 6 months. It couldn't do as much as you saw here, but still it was a first release. And I was sort of thinking back of the releases that we did and my favorite releases over the years. And of course, there was the text-based 356 that we did, an amazing product that people still are running on. And then there was the 260 where we, in 95, shipped the Windows client, and we made some adjustments to it, and it was sort of the first release where we got everything together. And we still had the small app without manufacturing, yet you could overview using the classic client. But I must say, given what we have in 2013, this is my new favorite release, because it sort of gets everything together, and we are sort of also leveraging a lot of the Microsoft technology that we've not been able to use before. So I'm really looking forward to see the uptake of this release, and of course I hope in another 10 years there will be another favorite release, but let's wait until then. So now Thomas will show us all this cool development stuff, so I'm going to wake you up a bit with some marketing slides, but it won't last long. So alone the name Rapid Start signals that this is something like smart or marketing-wise, but actually down beneath it's something that's really useful. So let's go look into what it's doing. Another marketing slide. So this is a known problem that we have today is that customers want more and more out of the box, but they don't want to pay for it, and the partners have to do all this themselves. So we know there's these demo databases or setup databases out there that you need to build up, and it's a lot of work to maintain them and adjust them to each customer. So with Rapid Start, we're trying to address this problem where we go and enable even end users to customize their own company and set it up without having help from partners. It could be startups that haven't had IT before, so it has to be really easy. It can be more complex solutions, and you can also add add-ins on stuff that's already in production. For the partners, it's about configuring add-on solutions. You can do special demos for customers that they can do a deployment for a lot of customers if they have something that's more or less the same. And the whole thing about this is configuration packages, which is a compressed XML format that we are made to make this happen. And these packages are what's sent to the customer or what you need to set up the solution. So that looks what's in there. So it's all about standard setup data. So it includes all the necessary data to set up NAV standards and have it run immediately. It's out-of-box setting for posting group, VAT, and something like that. And it's templates for importing customer and vendor information from the system that the customer will migrate from. So we have all the default settings for setting up this data, and use Excel for doing the import and for editing data. So it's very easy to get in and get in touch with it. Also, we know setting up an NAV is sometimes very cryptic. So DL posting setup, it's not for kids to understand what's in there. Honestly, I don't understand the terms in there. So we made a number of questionnaires that sort of have human readable text on these topics and let you set it up without being a geek. Even a normal accountant could do that. And then we have the templates for all the master data, the account schedule that people always need to set up. So the way we've done this is that we leverage the role center concept once again. So we have a role center for Rapid Start, where you have the full overview, the cockpit of what you're supposed to do in there. Then the heart of this is configuration worksheet, where you define the flow of the setup and group everything together, so the user or the person who needs to set it up can understand what's going on in here. And then you based on these worksheets, can create multiple configuration packages. That could be one for one type of customer, then one for another, or for an add-in you might create. It could also be depending on which country that you deliver this to. And out of the box, we created around 80 of these setup tables, and they're also localized, so it's not just W1. So if you are in Germany, you have your German packages that's adhere to German law, so that's all out of the box. So I'm going to do a short demo on how this works, so how it looks from the partners out on how to create the worksheet and to the packages and the questionnaires, and how the customer or the partner who sets this up is supposed to use it. Somebody stole my glasses, so they're here. that one. This one. So where are you, Thomas? Here. Okay, and I'll use the search box up here. The story behind this search box is that we didn't do a lot of customer research and send out our skilled user experience people to do this. It was something that developers thought, we need this, and he just coded it and put it in. That's not how we normally do things, but that was how this was invented. But now I lost it again. There you go. So I just go into profiles. I have Rapid Start down here. Set it to the default role center. Okay. Go up and restart the client. And here you can see the role center. So I have all my master data set over here, and I can see that none of it is completed because we haven't started yet. Over here I have my different thing. I have worksheets, packages, the table that includes the questionnaire, and the template for importing and exporting data. So let's take a look at the worksheet and drill down into that. And you can see all the master data up here. Different areas to set up, and if we go down here, I should be able to find the under this, of course, I can see all the questions in here. Let me just put this out. For each field, you have a human available text for setting up this, so even an end user will be able to understand this. And once you're done inside your worksheet, you go to your packages and export your package. So I'm not just exporting everything, but you can also take a subset, of course. Let's save it. So next thing you want to do is when you go out to a customer, you start the wizard out here. And this is where what the customer sees or what you set up. And here you just enter the company details, everything is put in. End up selecting your package. Select Techdays, and I don't have time to do this, but I will go up and press Apply Package, and then you will go through the importing data. You have to approve it, that everything is okay. And then you go to the questionnaires defined in there, and then you're set to go. And of course, you can always send out new packages and apply them if you sell the customer an add-on, and they can go through this without you having to go out there. So this is just the beginning of we are doing this area, because we want to do a lot more to get out of the box functionality in NAV, so you can focus what you're best at and what the customer wants to pay the most for. And of course you can set up the profile in here as well. I'll go back to our Susan thing in here. Oh, I'm in the VM, so I need to go out here. So we hope that you'll use this with your customer, and it will be a powerful start to get deployment being faster. It used to be called RIM in the old days, so the functionality has been there, some of it, but we really put a lot more thought into it and a lot of out-of-the-box things to set it up. Next topic is about application performance. So last night we went out with Luke and the MVPs for dinner, and as always it was a lot of fun, and we talked about old days. But as always we ended up talking about performance and all the war stories about things that went wrong and how things could be better in NAV. And we have sort of neglected for some years to put work into performance, but in 2013 we did a lot. So Thomas showed the query thing, which is already applied in a number of reports because we've seen some performance bottlenecks in there, and we just want to reduce them one by one. And if you go to some of the app sessions this week, you can also see where we really have done some improvements. But the typical area that we talk about at these dinners is about can we bring down processing time? What about logging? It logs too much, and also the UI is locked all the time, and the user is not able to go forward with the work. And we mainly look at the mainstream areas like posting and purchase order and general journals, because that's what everybody's using, and that's also where all the pain is with our biggest customers. So if you look at in 29, sales purchase order, it basically logs the DL ledger entry table 90% of the time, and also new reservation logs the whole table, which is not that great either. So we made a lot of changes in the DL posting, and now we only log around 10% of the time ideally. And the new reservation only logs the records that affected, which is a big change. But let's dig into that and look at what's going on. So if we look at in 2009, you basically do some post-processing, and then you do the first logging, the DL logs, and then you go party on the inventory. Then you log the DL again because it's another routine. And then you commit at the end. So more or less, DL is locked all the time. And we investigated in how to go and fix this, because this takes up a lot of time. You see at the middle bar, it's the bulk of the time that's spent posting inventory, but it basically locks the DL all the time. So in 2013, we did something where we go in and sort the posting lines based on type, which means that we avoid deadlocks in this area. And that makes us defer the log to the end for the DL. So the DL is unlocked most of the time. And of course, when you do that, end users can do a lot of posting in parallel. And that really makes a change from logging 90% of the time and now instead logging 10% of the time. And that makes a huge difference. Of course, we know that some of you have just done a lot of customization in this area, so we have made a configuration switch so you can actually turn off this feature if you end up being in trouble. So you can turn it off and on and clean up what you did in there, and finally turn it the DL log off to make this happen for your customers. Another thing we did is what in the old days, we had the Navision application server, and basically that's the way that was created. Everybody else in the ERP industry made application servers, and we were sort of envy. We also wanted one. So we basically took the client, removed the UI, and called that a server. But basically, it was still a client. And those of you who worked with it know that that was some stability problem, and it also had the problem it only ran one process inside. So with the CPUs today, where you can have 16 kernels inside, or 16 cores, you are not able to utilize the NAS in these surroundings. So what we did was to go in and utilize a new service architecture where we can have as many threads inside the process as we want to, and build this to create a new NAS that's a lot more scalable and also reliable than the old one. So we figured out also all this computer power and all these cores can be used for spinning up a lot of things in parallel, and that's what the NAS is doing for us now. So this is a piece of functionality where we enable you to, again, do a lot of stuff from AL, but also we have made some samples on how to use them inside the system. First of all, you can do a lot of things in background, freeing up the UI, so you can post and the UI will just come back to you immediately. You can use this new start session command we have for starting new sessions, and as many as you want to. And the more cores you have, the more you can actually run it each time. We made something called a job queue to utilize this out of the box in the system. And you can have any number of these within each customer company or for all companies combined. I didn't read my smile. It said scoped out use for NAV 2013. It actually does this. So don't trust everything you read on the slides. So I'm going to show you how to set this up and also show that it actually works. So let's go back to the demo image. So I'm going to start the admin console that Thomas showed us, and now I'm going to show some different functionality in there. Okay, here you go. So down here we added a section called NAS services. I'm going to I hope I am. Sorry. I forgot that yesterday as well. And basically, the NAS services is also trying to mimic the classic NAS, so you can put in start arguments that usually in the old days would call into code unit 1, and also define the method that you want to call in there. But the one we created for this service is 450, which is default for this. So let's see in here. So I'm going to save it. Another thing is that again, in order to be able to debug this, you need to start the debugger to make sure that you can set the breakpoints. So if you set a check mark down here, it will wait 60 seconds before starting the code, so you will have plenty of time to go in there and invoke the debugger. So that's also stored in. You can debug the NAS just like everything else. Next thing, I need to restart the server. Oh, that's a root. Oh, here. That's it. Thank you. Okay, I'll restart the client. And I just have to make sure that I need a user in here called the network service, because that's basically the account that the NAS will run under. And you need to make sure that it's in there in the user setup. And it also have to have the super attribute down here. See, it's down here, so, but this is okay. Then I go to the job queue and here. And you can see that we have started 2 of them. So there's a default one and the sales and purchase job queue that we're going to use for posting. Go to setup. Again, there's a new tab down here. Go down and select that I want to post a job queue, and you can see that you can set up a priority. And what that means is if you want to process the ones that's not printing first, you just change the priority of the printing task underneath, and that will automatically put them in the back of the queue and do the ones without the printing first. And I also want a notification in my role center that this is actually gone through. So go back to my role center. Go to just a random sales order. Open it. Say post. You can see the UI is just back and responding. And I should get a notification down in the corner when it's done. But of course, this enables also to do a lot of things serialized, so the users will not have to sit and wait for each other. And we think this will be a powerful feature that you can use for all sorts of things. So we introduced it for sales and purchase order posting, but of course you can extend it to whatever you like in the system. So just to recap, so this is the NAS replacement, or the NAS was supposed to do from the start. It's unlimited. You can do as many as you want to. It's very easy to set up. You have control in all sorts of aspects to use it. It's very stable compared to the one, and you can debug it. And you see in the example here, we have other sessions on this where you can go in and code whatever you want to leverage this feature. So please use this as much as you can. We also looked at dimensions, which has been a very popular feature that we introduced back in 3.0. It's really flexible, and it can do a lot of advanced drill down on your data. But you all know that it produces tons of entries, and there's a lot of performance impact also in posting because you have to deal with all of these dimensions. So what we did before is basically to copy all the dimension data between order and the resultant documents. And basically all of this data was redundant and just data weight flowing around. But that's how it was built and what we had to live with over the years. So a new idea arises on how to solve this, and basically instead we have a dimension table where we have an integer as a key, and what we do now is just the order has this integer that points to this table, and what it does after this is just carrying this integer around to the document, and of course the result of this is it's much faster. You don't have to copy all of this data. And it takes up very little space because the integer is the same, and it's only in the dimension table that these combinations of dimensions exist, and you will soon reach a situation where you don't add new combinations of dimensions, so it will not grow after a little while. And as a consequence of this, we looked at a customer where we got in, they had really issues on this, and we looked at before and after this, and you can see the gain is around 20,000 entries that we have less. 20 times 1,000 of these entries we have less than before, and this has tremendous impact also on performance. But you have to, of course, you need to do some work here. If you have done work on dimensions, you need to go and refit what you did to fit into this. You also need to take aware of the DL logs and the posting routine, that if they work or not after this. If not, you need to put the traditional logging scheme back in place, and that will also work, of course. And of course, as far as you can, job queue enable everything you have to do batch jobs, so the end users don't have to wait for it. Let me briefly touch the client, because I think we are almost out of time. I think the next session is in 10 minutes, but this is also a really important enhancement for us. We know there's still die-hard religious fanatics who believe that the classic client was the best, and I got a mail from a guy who wanted to buy a voodoo doll with my name on it because I killed the classic client. But I hope that will not happen, because we really put an effort into closing the gap between the classic client and the new one, and we added tons of stuff that goes far beyond what the classic client was ever supposed to do. There's a session today about the Windows client and what it does. We put a lot of shortcuts so you can keyboard your way out of almost everything. A lot of productivity things in there as well. Go to Excel and do things and get your data back really fast. We fixed the selection thing that didn't exist in 2029. That also works now. It works better than ever. And we also put styling in, which was a big wish from all of us. Now we can apply these different styles. So let me end with doing a demo on some of these things and what it can do, and also how you can customize it. First, what we did is to make you do custom filtering. I'm going to show you how you can do that, and also how you can do really weird grid layouts that goes beyond what you could do in Classic and of course in 2009. I'm not going to go into the add-in model, but this is about enhancing our add-in feature that we did in R2. So now you can go in and access a message. You can grab events from your control. So it's a lot richer development experience when you do these add-ins, especially when you do these complex charts in the system. There's a lot of help for you to write this, and it's very easy to read the code afterwards compared to what we had in R2. But let me switch to the client. Go to the list. So you can see here the different styles. So this is a filter that my customers, you have the, this one is blocked down here. So this is another style. But one of the things we did in here was to put in these custom things. So if you write something called my customer, you just filter to the customers in your customer list, and you can see it up here as well, flattened out. But if you go up and edit it, it's still the shortcut. And what's happening underneath is, if I go to code units 41, this is another feature that's in there. Shift Control M will collapse everything. And you can see I'm looking for the make text filter up here. And you can see all these in here. Oops. So me, user, company, my customers. And of course you can extend these to whatever you want to. But this really gives a really customized way of filtering the customer's data. And whatever you can dream up, you can write it in here. It's completely extensible what you can do in here. Let me rush to the other thing. Let's go to page. This page in here. So again, it should start the RTC in here. Oh, thanks. Now I got two. And you can see this is not a common grid container here. You have different columns in here. And this enables you to do whatever and really compressed UI representation of anything in here. And how it works is that go into design mode, is that we have provided grouping that can go as deep as you want to. And again, I can bring up the preview. So if you look at this guy, and bring up the property window, you can see there's a number of layouts in here. So I can actually go from this to columns. And you turn it around completely. So we hope this will help solve the problem of making this really customizable UI that the customers really want to cram everything into one screen. At least it can do a lot more than we could do in Classic. You can also have different height of the controls and level that. And another beautiful thing is you can see the preview all the time. So if I click around in here, you can see the property window follows around. So you are at all points able to see what's going on in here. I think I can grab another 2 minutes in here, so let me just do the last thing. Going to the SharePoint portal in here. So a lot of people ask us what's really the difference between the web client and the SharePoint client. And the big difference is the integration that we have done into SharePoint. So SharePoint is really great at doing workflow and as a document repository. Just running in a browser, you don't get that. You don't have that functionality. But when you run inside SharePoint, you can really enable that. And the technology behind this is the ability to link windows together in SharePoint. So you can see up here, I've linked the customer list together with the SharePoint repository over here. So I have the documents belonging to the Canon group in here. And how it works is that you link these together. So on the list pass, you say it should export the primary key to the other part, and the other web part over here on the right side should listen to that. And SharePoint is beautiful doing all the integration underneath, even though these applications don't know each other at all. So without coding, you can actually do a lot of powerful things inside SharePoint that hooks these things together and creates more customer value. So actually, I think I made it, and you have time to get to your next presentation. So first of all, thank you for coming, and thank you, Luc, for setting this together, and I hope you will do it again, because this is a great conference. We really feel that we are home with you developers here, and I hope you will also come to the expert area and learn more about Rapid Start and how that works. So thank you.